Can I start, Nick, by completely hijacking your show?
Go
I'm going
ahead.
to apologize in advance here, but I get so few times to ask Jay Rosehill questions, and I have one. I just hearing you talk a couple of seconds ago about Matthew Olivier and Ryan Reeves, and Reeves is having a hard time finding one these days, and he can kind of hear it and he can feel it. Like Jay, like once upon a time in the NHL, guys knew when someone else needed a fight. You know what? It's been 15 games. I can't find one. I need one. Okay, bud, no problem. I'll do it. There was almost like that courtesy between tough guys, and it probably ended as the tough guys sort of evolve their way out of the game. But work with me on this one. Like, how many times have you had someone saddle up next to you when you played and said, like, you know what? I'm really feeling the heat here. I could really use one. Can you do me a favor?
Yeah, it happens. It happens a fair bit. I remember, one time with Mike Rupp, they thought I speared Letang, but I just like put my stick near him and Letang dropped like a sack of flour. And Bill McCreary tore me a new one and everything else. I'm like, oh my God. So Mike Rupp comes over and he's like, hey, I know you didn't spear him, but I got to come over here and ask for one. And I was like, all right, I'll oblige you. And away we went. Another time, Sean Thornton, like I get put out there because we just got scored on. Thornton's out there. He's freshly cut over his eyebrow with like 6 stitches in his eyebrow. And he's like, oh, I don't. And I'm like, I really need one, Thornton. Like, I need this right now. Now's the time. Like, I got to get this one. He's like, all right. And then I remembered that later. And it goes back and forth with those guys. But when you're getting in 12 and 15 fights in a season, you have the time to go back and forth like that. But with with the Jack A and Reeves thing the other night, they're up 3-1. Hockey night in Canada, Saturday night, that rivalry. Let's just say Jack I did go him, regardless of the result. Roaring comeback to Toronto Maple Leafs. His organization is going to be looking at Jack I going, do you not know how to pick your spots? Like, do you think that was the time for you to fight Ryan Reeves?
But you know the interesting part about that is though, Rosie, like after Jack I did the shoo go away, it's 3-0. I'm not gonna let any emotion into this game. That's when the Maple Leafs started hitting, and that's when the Maple Leafs came back. It's almost like Jack I turning down the fight sort of and then Reeves gets smashed by Jack I going up the ice. It was kind of like 2009. I was showing this on the show yesterday, Max Talbot and Dan Carcillo, where Talbot goes into this fight and everyone knows that Talbot's going to get clean. The Pens are down 3-1 in the series. Talbot gets wiped out. He does the shh to the Philadelphia crowd that's going crazy and accused a comeback for the Pittsburgh Penguins. It was almost like Jack I leveling Reeves cued the comeback for the Maple Leafs. And I don't think this has ever been said before in the NHL, but we saw it on Saturday. It's almost as if the Maple Leafs said, how dare they do that to our enforcer? How you can't touch our tough guy. And then it was like cue the comeback for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And it was after that, it was a 7-Cobb game. It was a weird one on Saturday. That one was bizarre.
It is funny, and momentum comes from odd places. And honestly, if Revo really wanted one, you can force the issue. I've had guys say, try to shake me off before, but you force the issue. You put them in a position where it's either step up or get embarrassed kind of thing. And, Revo wasn't willing to do that. So there's a million different caveats to how that thing goes. And there's not as much opportunity to analyze it as there used to be, obviously. But, I do understand why Jack I would be like, I'd usually just shake my head. I don't do the whole point at the scoreboard BS and everything. Everyone knows why you'd take a guy off. But in that situation, didn't work out too well for Arbor Jack I. Had it been different, would it be a different result? Hard to say. But that was where his head was at the time.
Had a good one the next night. Had a good one the next night, though, in his defense. Had a beauty next night against Matt Rempe, of course. Anyway, sorry, Nick. Okay, I'll turn the recreation back to Nick.
He was scared.
No, it's fine. I was going to add to that. We've never seen Olivier and Reeves go, so maybe that happens in this game between Columbus and Toronto. But a lot of polarizing debates, Marek, in this market right now. Among them, is this Maple Leafs team different? So I ask you, is the only answer to that come playoff time, Marek, or what?
Yeah, that's it. There are some teams. It's a great question. And, I've always maintained that in Canada, for all the Canadian teams, there's no such thing as an 82-game season. It is 82 one-game seasons because every single game is an audit on the entire season for that Canadian squad. Again, there is no 82-game season. There are 82 one-game seasons, and perhaps that's felt most with the Toronto Maple Leafs. But at the beginning of the season, there are just some teams that just can't wait to get to the playoffs. It's like there's nothing really we're going to learn about the team during the regular season. And the minute we try to say something about them, it's like grabbing a handful of water because, Mitch Marner is having, the best season of his career. He's going to put up like 115, 120 points. And what's the conversation? Let's see what happens in the playoffs. Doesn't matter what anybody does individually or what this team does under Craig Berube, because the test is going to be in the postseason. There are just some teams that are like that. For the longest time before they made the Stanley Cup final against the Boston Bruins with Sedins and Kessler and Bieksa and all those guys, it was all, and Luongo was all about, it doesn't matter what they do in the regular season, it's what they're going to do in the playoffs. That's where all the answers are. So for the Toronto Maple Leafs, they can win the division, they can win the President's Trophy. None of it matters. All the answers for this team are in the postseason. To the question, because I'm going to give you a long-winded answer here, Nick, and I apologize. To the question of does it feel different? I always catch myself because doesn't everybody say that every year? Like, isn't that part of Charlie Brown and the football here with this team? This feels different. Well, yeah, it feels different because every team changes, sometimes slightly, sometimes more. But does it feel different? Yeah, it does. But then I catch myself and say, I've said that before about this Maple Leafs team.
But do you feel it extra this
Do you feel it more than you did 2 years ago? Do you feel it more than when they brought in Nick Foligno? Do you feel it more? I know what you're getting at. I mean, it looks different. It seems to be playing different. It's a team that's getting saves, but until we find out if this team can actually score in the postseason, I'm going to reserve my judgment on. Excuse me. I'm going to reserve my judgment on this squad.
Fair enough. That is the bed that they have made, in fairness.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Matthew Knies. With those two big boys in Matthews and Marner, they've played with some pretty good players and they've had some success. Hyman and Bunting come to mind. But do you think Matthew Knies is the best option these guys have had to play with?
Certainly looks like it right now. And I think if you're a Maple Leafs fan, you're looking back and you're saying, remember all that talk a couple of years ago about Matthew Knies and Marc-Andre Fleury and that deal? And you're just saying to yourself, sometimes the best deals you make are the other ones that you didn't. I think that it's certainly trending in that direction. Again, I want to see more runway here. I want to see more time with Matthew Knies. But as far as, checking boxes along the way and jumping over hurdles, I mean, you love the skies, you love the skill. I heard you guys talking about how, he's unaware of just how tough he is. I believe that. I think that's true of most young players in the NHL that are strong like Matthew Knies. I mean, it certainly seems so, and that it's heading in that direction. It looks like it. You love the skill set that he has, and for some guys, I remember Nathan McKinnon, and I'm not comparing Matthew Knies to Nathan McKinnon, so let's all calm down. But the point that I'm making is, some guys take a little bit longer to really feel comfortable in the NHL. Rosie, you know this better than me and Nick, clearly, and obviously. For Nathan McKinnon, it was about 30 games. And then it was like, okay, now Nathan McKinnon can play the same way that he played in Halifax with the Mooseheads. And he's just gotten better and better and better. Some guys take a little bit longer. Some guys pick it up quicker, but it seems as if now what we're seeing, and it's a beautiful thing to watch, you're starting to see a young player sort of hit his stride, where the skill and the confidence are starting to go hand to glove. And when you surround him with players like, Matthews and Marner, I mean, one of two things can happen, because you may look at it and say, I'm playing with Matthews and Marner, just go to the net and put my stick down and I'm going to get, 50 points accidentally. And some may think that that's true, but I would make the argument that playing with elite level players is more difficult because they're not wired to do simple things out there. So you really have to be able to think on their wavelength. And so far, Matthew Knies, a young Matthew Knies, has been able to do that. That to me is the most impressive. Because I always think that it's harder to play with elite level players because they're not wired like normal players. You have to think at a different level.
The best part, I think he seems really low maintenance. Like, he knows his job. Go in front of the net. Every goal is like within 5 feet of the net. And, it's great when you have those two guys do their thing beside you. I want to get your thoughts on Jake McCabe, because maybe, it's a bias thing, but I don't think he's getting enough love and praise nationally, internationally, in the States as well. He's having an unbelievable season. Yep. And there has been some conversation out there in the last couple of years about having an award for the top defensive defenseman. I think he would be in the front running for that award.
I don't know about front running. I think front running top. Well, top defensive defenseman this year in the NHL, like pure defense. Like there are two pairs in the NHL right now that are crushing it. Number one is Jonas Siegenthaler and Jonathan Kovacevic with New Jersey. That combination, like they match up against all the top dogs in the Eastern Conference, and they shut everybody down. Mikey Anderson and Vladislav Gavrikov in LA do the same thing on that team. Now, I don't know whether I want to sort of pull Jonas Siegenthaler out of that combination and say that's a standalone, because I kind of look at like that is the sort of sum of their parts with that pair. Ditto. Although we've seen Mikey Anderson do this before a little bit with Drew Doughty. Gavrikov, I maintain, is one of the more underrated guys in the league. Like I would throw Moritz Seider in that. I would throw Braden McNabb. You want to talk about someone that doesn't get any concert at all, who doesn't get any noise? Braden McNabb with the Vegas Golden Knights. When you look at purely defensive metrics for the Toronto Maple Leafs, top of that list is Chris Tanev still. If you follow, if you go to Natural Stat Trick and you sort of follow some of the underlying numbers about, expected goals, expected shots, a lot of the defensive metrics, as much as McCabe sort of passes a lot of the eyeball tests here, he's not even in the top 30. Really, like there's a lot of players that are ahead of him, and his teammate Chris Tanev is certainly one of them. Long-winded way of saying probably Jonas Siegenthaler would win that award today, purely defensive. But I do have a lot of time for Jake McCabe because I think he brings a lot of different things to the table that aren't just defensive metrics. I think that intimidation. I still think that toughness and snarl and all of that means something, certainly come playoff time, and the ability to swim in a water that's thicker when the puck is heavier. But as far as just like purely best defensive defenseman this year in the NHL so far, Siegenthaler on New Jersey is just absolutely crushing it this year.
Yeah, stats aside, there does seem to be something about McCabe that is just like a calming presence back there, kind of a father figure almost. But
I love him. I love him.
For sure, no question. Moving up the depth chart though, with Austin Matthews, it was not long ago. Like there was almost panic buttons being hit. Like, do we shelf this guy until the playoffs? Was like a common theme. The Four Nations face-off was not even on the radar anymore. Out of the blue, he comes back unexpectedly, and he's been himself. He's been on fire. His shot is back. His prowess, his power. Do you have any insight on what was going on with Austin Matthews?
I have no idea. I remember someone told me a couple of years ago that something's quote unquote wrong, and none of us know what this is really. We suspect a lot of conversation. Oh, it's got to be his back. Oh, clearly it's his shoulder. Like we haven't been told 100% for sure what this thing is. The only thing that I've been told about it is one of the keys to look for, something's amiss with Austin Matthews when he stops taking one-timers. That's like, so I'm always watching, like if he goes like a bunch of games without taking one-timers, I'm like, okay, are we sort of headed now for Austin Matthews is going to take a break for a little while? I don't think any of this should surprise anybody. And to be honest with you, but the previous point about, shut them down, bubble wrap, nerf the world, all that kind of stuff, stay out of the Four Nations. I do wonder, sorry fans, I know everybody hates this, whether load management is going to become a thing in the NHL, because Rosie, as 82 games is really hard. 82 games is really long. For any athlete. I think this is just going to be one of those things that's baked into the pie with Austin Matthews, that you're just going to have to, you're going to get a guy that could win the Rocket Richard Trophy every year. And you could also have a guy that's got to be sat down for 5 or 10 games in a row. And that's just going to be what it's like for Austin Matthews. But I don't think we should be surprised. I mean, he's amongst the elite at what he does, and his game continues to evolve, and he continues to turn himself into an excellent two-way player as well. I just think that, baked into this one is he's not going to be 100%. Like no player is 100% healthy. I think that, by the time you get that deep into your career, there's something that's nagging, something that's hurting. But, the reality for Austin Matthews is probably going to be, you'll take the Rocket Richard Trophy candidate along with the guy that may see some stretches out of the lineup. You just have to be settled with it, I think.
Yeah, the way he's playing, I'm willing to put to bed that conversation about the four nations. I am willing to open up that conversation about Yanni Hakanpää. Like, what are we doing here? But a story for a different day. Check out the LeafsNation.com. Why I think Yanni Hakanpää should not play in the four nations. He's played twice in the last 310 days, but I digress. Let's stir shit up. March 7th, the NHL Trade Deadline. Who are some names to watch for? Could Kadri be in the mix? O'Reilly, guys like that. Who are the Leafs hunting here?
I'm glad you mentioned Kadri, because at the beginning of the season, any team that I would talk to who is in sort of acquisition mode would all kind of say the same thing. We're just going to wait for the Calgary Flames to officially fall out of it, and then we're going to knock on Craig Conroy's door. At a certain point, if the Calgary Flames, are completely committed to this rebuild here, there's going to come a time where Nazem Kadri says, like, at my age, do I still want to be part of something like that? Does he ask out? But look, like, the Calgary Flames are in a playoff race here. Like, the Calgary Flames, here we are in late January, and the Calgary Flames are still in it. More and making it even more complicated for Calgary, for Craig Conroy, if he wants to be completely committed to this complete overhaul and rebuild of the Calgary Flames. The Vancouver Canucks keep opening doors for them, and the latest door that opened was last night against the Buffalo Sabres. Like, all of a sudden, like, and I still think that Vancouver does make it in there, but as the losses pile, and like losses to like some really bottom feeding teams here, as Dustin Wolf, who by the way isn't getting enough consideration for the Calder, as Dustin Wolf continues to pull off heroics, and Jonathan Huberdeau has a comeback season, and the kids are more than all right in Calgary, I'm saying to myself, you know what? Maybe it shouldn't be a surprise that there are a lot of teams out there, Nick and Jay, that right now are widening their net when it comes to who they're trying to trade with right now, because I don't think the Calgary Flames are open for business at all. I think the Calgary Flames, I don't think they're going to add anybody. Like, I don't think it's a go for it year for the Calgary Flames, but rebuilds are bunny hops. It's 2 steps back and 1 step forward, or 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And the Calgary Flames find themselves in an envious spot right now. Do they get wasted in the first round if they make it in? Probably. But that's still a couple of home dates and rejuvenate the crowd, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the Calgary Flames, where many teams thought they would be open for business now, and Craig Conroy would be getting his trade deadline ducks in a row, and this guy's going to go first, and this guy's going to go second, and this is going to get us this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's off the table. Calgary Flames might make the playoffs, as crazy as that sounds.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, you're right. There's just a lot of teams, I think, in the conversation for a playoff spot. And the four nations, that 2-week break won't help leading up to March 7th as well. So the Leafs will add. We just don't know who at this point in time.
I want to park some time to talk about that Edmonton Oilers statement that we saw last night. Rosie, can I ask you? I started this off by asking Rosie a question.
Go
Nick,
ahead.
with your permission, I want to end with asking Rosie a question.
That's good. Go ahead.
Okay. If you were Connor McDavid and you saw that put out on your behalf, what would you think, Rosie?
Oh, I'd be embarrassed, man. I mean, I just don't get what the hoopla is about. The guy got overly frustrated for the second time in a week. He, did, not that the original clip on the shoulder put the kid out of the game, whatever. It's probably him being soft, but the second time he's in the news in a week, and just a blatant, vicious cross check right to the face. What do you expect? I would take my lumps and move on and wish my organization would do the same thing.
The funny thing about the whole thing, and I sort of threw this out as sort of sideways snark last night on Twitter, is, here's the Oilers putting out this statement portraying Connor McDavid as a victim. Meanwhile, Evan Bouchard's out there saying, I just got cross-checked in the face. Is there going to be a statement from my team about how I got cross-checked in the face by Tyler Myers? Feathers.
And no one's mad that Tyler Myers got a 3-game suspension. There's 2 of the identical things, and everyone's only mad at the superstar. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Makes the hockey world go round, boys. Makes the hockey world go round. Thanks,
Let's not bury the lead, though. Why is it the Leafs' fault that McDavid got suspended? Right?
I saw that. Everything, it's the Toronto Maple Leafs. You should do a segment, guys, called "Oh, look, there's my Maple Leafs navel," where everything has to revert back to the Toronto Maple Leafs somehow. Somehow, someone will make that argument. Yes.
Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, You can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.